Good morning and welcome to the new episode of Dr. Lamba's Awakening Call. Canada is a privileged country, privileged with its landmass, variety of fauna and flora, 20% of the world's fresh water, huge mineral and natural resources. And yet, curiously, or shall I say paradoxically, this is the most burdened country with the taxes. Extremely rich and yet imposed, burdened with a heavy taxation. And all that is not because of any other need, but for the hare-brained schemes of the government. Well, I'm not going to talk about those issues. What me is more important is that how the citizens of this country are burdened with the federal debt accumulation, the foreign debt and the domestic debt, both. They are rising and they are shooting through the roof. Government hasn't been able to take any effective steps to curb either of them. As a matter of fact, the public debt has increased and is increasing by billions and billions. It's not increasing in arithmetical progression. Basically, it should not be increasing at all. But it's increasing and increasing in geometrical progression. That's not desirable. If we look at it on a per person basis, every Canadian, every individual, every single man, woman, and child between the age of 16 and 25, I'm not including the middle-aged people, I'm not including the seniors, I'm not including the infants, but the most productive class, 16 to 25. Their lifetime tax burden is minimum $20,000 a day. That is almost 50% of the income of a family in Canada. And that is only from the increase in the federal debt. What does this mean? This means that while the growth of the public debt should be a concern of all Canadians, including the government, it should be a matter of special concern for the younger Canadians. This group, younger Canadians, 16 to 25, those who are still in the schools and the colleges, some may have just started life. They are facing a bleak future. They are facing a burden of blood-sucking, muscle-breaking taxation burden. And I am amazed that no single politician, not just one, not a single academician, not a single journalist of repute has paid any attention to that. I don't know why, but the whole thing stinks. Now, look at it, the reality of the situation. The federal debt has been rising, as I said, continuously. And even though the government promised a balanced budget, that has remained an empty dream, a chimera. The federal debt has risen substantially during pandemic. And it's not only pandemic to be blamed, because we see that the pandemic has been contained, but the increase in the federal debt doesn't show any sign of increasing, and it's being projected even by the government to increase and keep on increasing for the foreseeable future. Now, foreseeable future, when the government uses it, it can be 5 years, it can be 10 years, it can be forever. Now, large deficits, when they are there, they come with a cost. And who pays the cost? You and me, all the Canadians. You will have to pay for your borrowing, the government's borrowing today, through the additional taxation, which will be implemented at a later date. So now, with the COP26 commitments made and earlier with the Paris commitments made, we have seen how the commitments increase the burden of the taxation, the carbon tax, for example. And with the new things coming in, the costs are going to increase with the burden. So, this taxation burden would keep on increasing, and who is going to pay? The group I talked earlier between 16 to 25. It's clearly demonstrated that the Canadians aged 16 to 80 now, right from the children who are starting the career to the people who are at the fag end of the career, or the life rather, like me, in next 2 years, till 2025, they will pay an additional $332.5 billion in personal income tax. Imagine it. 33 million people in Canada, and they will pay another 332.5 billion in personal income tax. Of course, not in 1 year, but in their lifetime. And I'm taking this figure from the Fraser Institute, which has not been contradicted by the government. Of course, it's on a present value basis, taken into consideration the inflation and everything. But imagine $332.5 billion only in the personal income tax in the lifetime by 37 million people. Because there was a comment that the population, I said 33, it's not 33, it's 37, okay. I'll take it 40 million, is that okay? Let's count another few million refugees who are going to come and not going to pay, but are going to be burden to the society. On an average, Canadians between this age group, 16 to 80, the earning age group, will pay an additional $10,498 in additional taxes. Every Canadian, and this is an average, weighted average of course, but look at it. $10,000 every year going only as an income tax. If your income is 60,000, so 10,000 goes away only as a tax. Of course, at 60,000 you might be paying 7,000. Average is 10,000. And this is going to assume a worse situation when I look at it from a different angle. Who is going to bear the bigger burden? It's not the people who are at the top of their career. It's the younger Canadians who will bear a disproportionately large burden. So the sins of the father and the grandfathers, and those sins who are electing governments which are irresponsible, they are visiting the children, sons, daughters, and grandchildren. So, individuals aged 16 to 25 would collectively pay an additional $117.9 billion in personal taxes over their lifetime. Again, the figures have been compiled by the Fraser Institute, and government till now has not contradicted, because there is nothing to contradict. Now, what does this mean? This tax burden of $117.9 billion of the younger people aged 16 to 25 translates to 35.5% of the total tax burden imposed on all ages. The group which are the highest is between 25 and 50. Most of the people start thinking of retirement at 50, maybe 60. But this group, which is at the beginning of the career are burdened with 35.5% of the total tax burden. And this is a cumulative tax burden. Who knows what the public debt is going to be? Now comes the other picture, another dimension to this sorry state of affairs. And that is, on a person to person base, or a per person base, all individuals who are expected to pay a lifetime tax burden, which is stacked in the beginning, of $20,000 a year as a consequence of increase in the federal debt. Couple of calls came, comments here. Now let me tell you, the meaning of this is very clear. The growth of the public debt is always a burden. This is a permanent burden. And this was public debt which spoiled the economies of countries like Venezuela. They were very rich countries, richer than possibly Canada is today. And this public debt just annihilated and destroyed their economies. This happens in Philippines under Marcos. So what are we trying to do? We are trying to follow the tin pot politicians who had no sense of economy in a regime which is professionally democratic and has a large number of economists at its beck and call. Then there's another point. There's a significant risk for the Canadian taxpayers due to potential higher interest in future. Now this figure, which I said 20,000 and 179.9 billion and 335 billion, all this is based on the premise that the interest burden doesn't increase. But there's every likelihood that there'll be significant increase in the interest rates in future. That can be because of the higher cost of the oil, higher energy costs, or whatever. But once these interest rates increase by even 1%, or even 0.5%, you can well imagine how much the total increase would be. And specifically, rising interest rate would also increase the burden of the federal debt accumulation. And the net result, higher tax burden on all Canadians relative to the baseline projections. So if the baselines are so horrendous, if the baselines are so horrible, what shall happen to the real picture when the baseline projections increase because of other factors? There can be more pandemics, there can be war, or any other calamity seen or unforeseen. Now, let's look at the lifetime tax burden from the current and the future federal borrowing by age group. Age 16 to 25, when the people are starting their life, the careers and their earnings. This group, 16 to 25, the tax burden is going to be exactly, I said 20, but the exact figures come to $24,258 in the lifetime, of course, as the extra. To go to the next group, higher group, between age of 26 to 35, is going to be $15,982 per head. Let's go to the next decade, 36 to 45, $11,149. Go down further, 46.55, $7,843. Next decadal group, 56 to 65, $3,771. And then the retirement group comes. They are not going to escape tax free. They'll pay $1,765,000. And the last group above 75 would pay $822. So none can escape the dragnet of this additional burden. None can. If that is the situation, what is the outlook? The outlook is bleak. The outlook is horrible. The outlook is terrible. It's bone chilling. If you look at the total accumulated federal tax and its awesome burden, especially on the youngest group, it's terrifying. Now the question is, why there has been no response to this report and no discussion in the parliament, either at the federal level or at the provincial levels. We have been discussing things ad nauseum which are most trivial. But what affects the Canadians maximum? We are absolutely quiet. Is it because the politicians and their paid economists and the paid media are either incapable or purposely are turning a blind eye to the reality? They are like a pigeon who closes his eyes when the cat is coming. Clearly knows the danger. I don't doubt the capability of these economists and the media. They are aware. But since they are dependent on the politicians for their extra money, for their munificence, for their benevolence, they criticize them only in a very veiled terms and in those areas, in those sectors which do not affect people materially and doesn't change the perception of the people. This situation is in fact a precursor to an economic tsunami, worse than any pandemic. But are the authorities listening? That is $1 million question. And the sooner we face it, the better it would be. Thank you.